Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on where you are in the world. This is Gloria White, and I am coming to you from Utah, USA. I'm going to continue in the book of Ezekiel. I'm in the Bible Gateway, and I am reading this because it gives the measurements of the temple layout in feet, which may be something easier for you to grasp in your mind and to lay out in your mind. God took great pains to make sure we could understand this. This was very important to him, and it should be important to us too, however tedious it is. So I did chapter 40 and 41, so now I'm in chapter 42. Then the man, whose appearance was like bronze, took me north into the outer courtyard. He brought me to the chambers that were opposite the open area around the temple, and opposite the outside wall on the northern end. This building, with its north-facing door, was 175 feet long and 87.5 feet wide, facing a 35-foot section of the inner court, and facing the paved area of the outer court were rows of chambers 3 stories high. An interior passage ran in front of each chamber. It was 17.5 feet wide and ran the entire length of the gallery, 175 feet. The doors faced north. All the upper chambers were narrower because the galleries took up more space than they did on the first and second levels. There were no columns for the chambers on the third level, no columns like the ones in the courtyards. So the chambers on the third level were set back further than the chambers on the first and second level. The wall behind the chambers ran parallel to them, and the outer courtyard for a distance of 87.5 feet. On the side next to the outer courtyard, the row of chambers was 87.5 feet long. On the side nearest to the sanctuary, it was 175 feet long. The chambers on the first level could be entered from the east when coming in from the outer courtyard. These chambers on the wall surrounding the inner courtyard are where the priests prepare themselves for their sacred duties. There were rows of chambers on the south side of the temple, just like on the north, separating the inner and outer courtyards. There was a walkway in front of them. These chambers were exactly like the chambers on the northern side. Same measurements and architect. In front of each walkway in the south chambers was a doorway near the wall that could be entered from the east when coming in from the outer courtyard. The man to Ezekiel. The north and south chambers that face the courtyard around the temple are sacred, set apart for the priests who come near to the Eternal to eat the holiest of offerings. In those sacred chambers, the priests stored the holiest of offerings, grain offerings, sin offerings, and guilt offerings. As soon as the priests enter into the sacred areas, they can't leave and go into the outer courtyard until they first take off their holy clothes in which they have ministered to the Lord. These ministerial clothes are sacred. They must put on other clothes before they go anywhere other people are allowed to be, because their priestly garments can't come in contact with anything impure. When the man completed taking measurements inside the temple, He took me out through the lower eastern gate and began measuring around the temple complex. He took his measuring reed and measured the entire east side. It was 875 feet long. He measured the north, south, and west sides, and they too were 875 feet long. He measured the temple complex on all four sides. The walls around it formed a square 875 feet by 875 feet. It served to separate the sacred from the common. Chapter 43. Then the man, whose appearance was like bronze, led me to a gate that faced east. There I witnessed the glory of God of Israel, storming from the east. His voice thundered like a great waterfall. The entire earth reflected his shining glory. Just as God's glorious presence departs Israel for Babylon in the east, Ezekiel 10, so he returns with spectacular fullness to the eastern gate of a restored temple. The vision I saw then was just like the vision I saw when he arrived to destroy the city, and was kindred to the vision I had near the Chebar Canal or river. I fell on my face to the ground. The glory of the Eternal entered the temple by the east gate, and the Spirit picked me up and brought me to the inner courtyard so I could watch as the Eternal's glory filled the temple. While the man stood beside me, I heard a voice addressing me from inside the temple. The Eternal One speaks. Son of man, this temple is the home of my throne on earth, and the place where I'll rest my feet. I will dwell here among my people Israel forever. Never again will the Israelites or their kings desecrate my holy name. Never again will they prostitute themselves by worshiping false gods or erecting monuments to their dead kings. They defiled my name and committed disgusting acts right next to my sacred space by putting their thresholds and doorposts right next to mine, with only a wall separating me from their idols. This is why I consumed them in my wrath. Now it's time for the people to change, to put away their whoring and the monuments to their dead kings. If they do that, then I will dwell among them forever. Son of man, go to the people of Israel and give them a detailed description of the temple you have seen, so that they will feel ashamed of their abhorrent living. Give them some time to study the plan. If they express shame for all they have done, explain to them the temple design, the structure, the complex's entrances and exits, its rules and regulations. Write it down so that everyone can see the design and the regulations, and be sure to follow the specifications and rules when the time comes. Now here is my directive concerning the temple. The mountaintop and everything around the temple must be regarded as sacred ground. Pay strict attention to this directive concerning the temple. The following measurements are the dimensions of the altar. They were taken with the long measure, which is 21 inches long. The gutter at the base of the altar is 21 inches deep and 21 inches wide, and has a 9-inch rim around the edge of it. These are the heights of each part of the altar. The altar rises from the ground 3.5 feet to the lower edge that is 21 inches wide. From there it rises an additional 7 feet to an upper ledge that is also 21 inches wide. The altar's hearth rises another 7 feet and has 4 horns that protrude from each of its corners. The altar's hearth is square, 21 feet by 21 feet. The upper ledge is square too, 24.5 feet on each side. The rim around it is 10.5 inches, and the base is 21 inches wide all around. The steps of the altar face east. Burnt offerings are arguably the most important sacrifices in the centerpiece of the temple practices. They are performed every morning and evening without fail, at every festival, holiday, and by individuals for various personal reasons. The burnt offerings differ from other offerings because they are totally consumed in the fire. No meat is left over to serve the priest and Levites, or to be the main course in a festival meal. Everything is offered up to God. The burnt offerings attract God's attention to the temple because they rise up to heaven with a pleasing aroma. Before the people can begin their steady stream of offerings to God, the altar itself must be consecrated to Him. Eternal One. Son of man, this is what I, the Eternal Lord, have to say regarding the regulations for the altar after it is built. These apply to burnt offerings and sprinkling blood on the altar. For a sin offering, give a young bull to the Levitical priest who belong to Zodak's line. These are permitted to come before me to serve. Take some of the young bull's blood and wipe it all over the altar's 4 horns, the 4 corners of the upper ledge, and its rim. This ceremony will cleanse the altar and cover all of the impurities. Then take the young bull to the appointed area outside the temple complex and burn its carcass. On the 2nd day, offer another sin offering, a perfect male goat, and cleanse the altar the same way you cleansed it with the bull. After you have finished this part of the cleansing ritual, find a perfect young bull and a perfect young ram from the flock and bring them to the altar. Present them to the Eternal, and the priest will throw salt on them and give them as a burnt offering to the Eternal. Then every day after that for 7 days, you are to offer a male goat at the altar as a sin offering. Along with the male goat, you are to prepare a perfect young bull and a perfect ram from the flock. Present these offerings for 7 days in a row, and they will cleanse and cover the altar, dedicating it for service. After the 7 days of cleansing are over, the priest will offer your burnt offerings and peace offerings on the altar. This will begin on the 8th day and continue forever. Then I, the Eternal Lord, will accept you and your offerings. And I'm going to stop before I read 44.